Hello, everyone, and welcome to this slightly different stream. I am your subpar host, Mod Sarnie, but I'm joined by the ever wonderful Mod Brow, Grub, and West, and we're going to take you through the art of Kingdom Divided with the artists themselves. So, what a joy indeed. We've also got the wonderful Mod Light on chat and Mod Druid behind the scenes. But before we jump into that, how is everyone doing? I will start with you, Mod Brow. How's it going?
2 thumbs up. I'm great.
Excellent. I like that very much. And Mod Grub, how's it going?
Yeah, 2 thumbs up. Pretty good.
Nice.
Good. And is Mod West going to follow the trend?
Oh, I have to at this point. 2 thumbs up, definitely. I would go with the third one, but I don't have a third hand, so doing very good. Yeah, it's all good.
Thumbs up all around, indeed. So what has everyone been up to this week? Let's go back around the room again.
Oh, what have I been up to? Oh no. I can't say. It's exciting. Super exciting. Yeah. I'm actually I can't even remember what I did this week, so I'm just covering for myself. Let's just say it was exciting.
I like how on both streams I've hosted now, it's been secrets. Everyone's been up to secrets. We can't tell you anything. I'm sorry, guys. But you're just gonna have to wait to find out. Soon, maybe not soon. Who knows? Mod Grub, what you been up to?
It's the same. I mean, my life is Jagex and working on that, so I can't really talk about any of it. But it is exciting.
Yeah, it is frustrating seeing all the cool stuff we know is going on, but yet we can't unfortunately allude to it yet. But yeah, hopefully soon you'll be able to know more. I know we've got that summer announcement stream coming up soon, so that should get you guys excited for some good stuff. And Mod West, what you've been up to? More secrets?
I mean, I think it's more secrets. I think it's my issue here is it's less so if it's secret and more so whether it's secret. Because like I know I've been working on it, I just know how much we've been open about it. I mean, I suppose in a way we've always been talking about things like leagues and Deadman as like an ongoing thing. So like, yeah, I've been sort of knee deep in notes at the moment without any specifics. Yeah, seasonal stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome stuff. Yeah. Again, hopefully we can share more with you soon. There will be something coming tomorrow, hopefully, which I will allude on in a second. But first up, we have the announcements. So first up is ! Game update. Our first batch of new client features updates are here. Explore the new features we've added to the C++ client, including the Chambers of Xeric helper, tile markers, anti-drag options, boost indicators, and much more. Try out all the new additions via Steam and let us know what you think, so you can take a look with ! Game update. We've also got a stream tomorrow at 5 PM where we'll have some of the JMods on who worked on the first round of updates for the C++ client, and they're going to be taking us through some stuff and maybe teasing some new ones. So yeah, stay tuned for that. ! AKD, A Kingdom Divided, Old School's 150th quest is out now. Uncover the secrets of the Karen Council in the next chapter of the Great Karen storyline, and you'll also be able to experience the rework to Shayzien and improved Archaeus spellbook. Find out more with ! AKD. We've also made some changes over the last week. There's been some other bits go out with today's game update, so make sure to read both to find out everything. ! Mini roadmap. If you want a reminder of what's upcoming for the next 2 months of Old School, then you use ! Mini roadmap to find out what we've got planned for the not so distant future. And finally, we just want to let you know, if everything goes to plan tomorrow, we will be releasing the Wilderness Changes blog. And this will include an analysis on the recent survey results and a look into our proposal for some upcoming changes. So fingers crossed that all goes well and it goes out tomorrow, and you guys will get to see that very soon. But as always, if you have anything you'd like to ask the team or myself, then please @OldSchoolRS with your questions. Before we get onto the showcase, however, let's look at some player-created art. So you can use ! UGC to see all of these, and the first one is My Version of Old School's Death by PBRD7.
Is he like? Is he
Nice.
ripped? I almost see like abs on him.
He looks kind of
That's
ripped.
sick.
I'm not gonna lie.
He's like,
He's definitely got a low fat content, so I mean, he's absolutely
hey, dude, he needs some skin on those bones, man. What is he doing?
It's just because he sits in that chair all day. He's got nothing else to do. He just sits in that chair
That's
waiting
true.
for players to come along. Like, you know, he's got no
That's true.
exercise regime. Cool. Let's go on to the next one. This is a 3D map of Gielinor, which Mod West informed me that this looks like it's taken from something you gave players.
Yeah, so a few years ago, I mean, someone just messaged me on Twitter, or maybe it was Reddit, and they wanted like a height map of the world. So I just sort of rendered one out and threw it out there to see what players could do with it. I think there's been one of these done in the past, but not rendered quite so nicely. The first thing I did note on this though is that they've certainly exaggerated the scale quite a little bit. There were some comments on Reddit where it got posted where they were talking about how the area between Trollheim and the wilderness sort of looked like a wall from Game of Thrones, and it certainly doesn't look like that. I mean, it's quite a tall hill in game, but yeah, it certainly isn't as tall as that. And even like the Slayer Tower there looks very much pulled from very very high up, which would be quite quite a hefty set of steps to climb. Yeah, it's awesome. It's just great to see. Like, it'd be cool to just do like a little flyover.
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
Like
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that for like to hang on the wall or for some like diorama. It would be amazing.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I want like a physical map of this that's like the bumpy maps, the ones that are like plastic with like the topological features. I want that, like,
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we need to, since we got like a Valamor and a southern desert in there, I think I got something complete. That'd be awesome. I mean, that edge around the desert there does look a little, little abstract.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, it's also interesting the pyramid there at the bottom, because you can roughly make out where the desert treasure and the pyramids inside Sophonim are, but the agility pyramid is built out of assets, so it's just like an empty hole in like a crater.
Yeah, I was wondering what that was. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Because for some reason they decided to build a big pit to put a pyramid in, which maybe the assumption is that they've uncovered the pyramid from the desert sands. Maybe I never quite understood that, but yeah, it does look a lot more extreme like this. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, very very cool indeed. Moving on, we have what they've dubbed it as Mr. Ancient, which seems to be, to me, is like an old school Fantastic Four crossover, which is pretty cool.
That's quite cool. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be like, oh, cool, it's purple, but I'm always known as the purple. I mean, my lighting.
Now you said it. Now you said it. So.
I imagine it would be said at least once during this stream from US. So.
Yeah.
I'm also wearing purple as well, because it's not.
Lights are purple too, dude.
And finally, we have Vorkath and Rallis. I hope I'm saying that right. Commission from Killerfishy24. So.
So cool.
Very very cool. I always enjoy seeing Killerfishy's work. Really really cool stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, really love that.
Feels like a old school heavy metal cover.
Yeah. Graphic novel cover or something. It's awesome.
Cool. So with the player showcase done, I suppose we should move on to the reason why we're all here, which is the art showcase. So as we've got most of the art team here today, they are going to take you through a tour of the art designs and the process of the Shayzien Rework that came with A Kingdom Divided. So if you have any art related questions for the wonderfully talented team we've got here today, then make sure to @OldSchoolRS. I know Modlight is in the chat moderating, so thank you, and we'll hopefully have some time at the end to ask some of your queries. So without further ado, it is over to you, our team.
Awesome. So yeah, just to I suppose just to sort of cover the whole why of everything, I actually just saw a question put up in the chat itself from Benching315 who says, why are you reworking Zeah for the 6th time instead of focusing on necessary updates? It's an interesting question. It's not something that we just, one day we're just sat there and thinking, let's just remake the game again. This is definitely something that's come from it's definitely player inspired. Back in 2016 when Krend was first released, players had lots of feedback. They certainly weren't too pleased with the first iteration of it. If we could get up the first image, that would help sort of explain sort of the missteps that were made right at the get-go. So on the left here, we have the initial plan for Great Krend. It's so the intention here was for it to be like the biggest city in the game, so big that it would actually be larger than most kingdoms. Maybe a slightly wrong direction to go in, as it's hard to sort of sell that, especially with the historically low render distance that we've had in the past. Also, sort of making good on that plan. You can see the release of Zeah to the right there. It's not quite it's missing quite a few elements. The way it came out, it kind of does feel like 5 separate cities, and I assume, I wasn't here at the time, but I assume that was due to just sort of having to cut corners towards the end of the project and not being able to fill in those final gaps. So yeah, as you can see, I mean, it's more stark between Shayzien and Hesidius, where in the plan there on the left, there's buildings all the way around from the war camp to the farm, while in the release there was like this big strange hill with a blocking that wouldn't let you through, covered in trees. So based on this, some players, well, it took them a few months. There were some feedback changes that were made in the months after the release of Zeah, but for the most part, the broad strokes, the problems with the layout, the size, the scale, they hadn't really been addressed. And back in April 2016, a user on Reddit called Gentle Tractor, he posted his own sort of a reimagined version of what Great Krend could look like. Also thinking about some future content that could be released that we'd already spoken about, things like the first raid, James of Zerek, and some content like the Winter Todd. And I think the Tasakar or the whatever they were attached at the time was on that map as well. And it just sort of showed sort of showing how Krend could look if it was a bit more like the mainland. I mean, the whole idea of Krend and Zeah, initially designed by, I believe, ModReach back in like 2014, 2015, was to sort of have a testing ground for like new content. We wouldn't have to worry too much about changing the mainland that everyone knows and loves. So yeah, if we could move on to our second image.
Was there
this sort of
sorry, Wes. Was there much inspiration you guys took from Gentle Tractor's idea?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I think it certainly helped sort of like just sort of given each city its own unique feel to it. It's the way it was laid out, sort of leading more into those elements to it. I think I mean, one of the problems we'll get onto with Shayzien later is the fact that it does kind of feel like a temporary sort of war camp rather than an established city. That was definitely something that was apparent in Gentle Tractor's map. Also, just sort of shrinking the sizes of lots of the parts of Hesidius and moving things around. That certainly went a long way in guiding it. And not just that original one, but the sort of back and forth at the time during like the May, June time in 2016, where we came out and said we can't do this much of an elaborate overhaul because it would literally mean starting from scratch and an extra 3, 4, 5 months of work. But and then after that, Gentle Tractor sort of tried to create like a sort of like a mid ground, sort of taking some of the core elements, sort of like adding some bodies of water into the actual kingdom itself. As you can see on the left there, it literally has no rivers, no lakes. Generally you need those. Understandably, the idea of it being a city-sized kingdom, and it's on the coast, it wouldn't really need to have rivers. But once you sort of separate them out into more smaller cities, it starts to make a little less sense why there's less water, because generally civilized settlements are built next to fresh sources of water. So yeah, there's definitely elements of that that appeared and helped us going forward, and just in terms of scale as well. So yeah, I suppose the first thing we did in terms of reacting to that feedback was sort of polishing the coast. Obviously, we added more content as well. So we had the Winter Todd to the north. Over time, we've added the James of Zerek with the Kebos Lowlands, and as well as the Farming Guild and Mount Cruel. as well as just sort of polishing the south and eastern coastlines. And then eventually that led on to the Studios rework, which was, I mean, incredibly positive. And since then, players have been asking, when are we going to do the next houses? And yeah, with AKD, we finally got around to doing the next one, which was Shayzien. I mean, it's been 5 years at this point, a bit longer than I first anticipated when I joined the company. But we haven't purely been focusing on Great Krend all this time. We've had other big updates that take up our attention, like Song of the Elves or the Dark Mire and Mauritania updates we've done in the past as well. So yeah, we do have to split our attention somewhat. And yeah, just sort of going forward, taking the learnings, mistakes from the past, and sort of making sure that we can build a more consistent and just make Karen make sense essentially. And Livicane, Arceus, Piscrilius, I suppose they're next. There's no deadline or plans yet, but yeah, that's certainly something that we'll be looking to in the future. So unfortunately, we'll have to do another 7th, 8th, and 9th rework. So yeah, sorry, what was his name? Benching 315. So yeah, apologies, but this is very much a demand from the players, and it's taken us taken us a long time to make through on it, but we're slowly getting there. And it's not as if we're not
where
doing
would
other
you
things.
want to where would you want to go to next in terms of reworking?
I think in terms of like bite-sized chunks, I think Piscrilius is a good one. If you just look at the map there, it's certainly smaller than the other two, so it gives us a nice sort of enclosed area. It's also just like a simple like dock port area, so it should be a bit easier to do. The problem I have with Livicane and Arceus is they're so like closely connected that reworking one without really touching the other one is going to be quite difficult, and you're going to have to work around elements rather than just sort of fixing it all at once. So yeah, at some point, I think sort of the Livicane Arceus area together sort of matches up to a similar size of Shayzien. So yeah, once we've got a better understanding of that, yeah, we'll move on to that after that. Hopefully before we move into the southern kingdom of Valamor as well.
I would love to go back and do a remaster of Prif. That's a bit of a side one, but maybe even a contentious one. But I would love to do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I know. I mean, some players have voiced some concerns with some of the I suppose the larger shapes and the high fantasy elements. I think we've learned a lot as well with these past few years.
Generally, it's good, but I think the quality bar in Shayzien, all those subtle elements, I think if Prif had those small touches, it would just bring it to life, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Cool. If we move on to the next image, we're going to get into the the nitty-gritty of the Shayzien rework. So yeah, just sort of going over our rough goals. So yeah, we just wanted to think about just sort of giving Shayzien making it more believable, giving it its proper identity, and sort of telling a story with that. So yeah, this is sort of just like a very early fake map I did. This isn't really how I go about designing maps anymore. It's how I've done it in the past, sort of inspired by how General Tractor sort of did like using Photoshop to just sort of create a RuneScape looking map, rather than doing any sort of like more elaborate design. It easily gives a sense of scale and sort of shows where everything's going to be. So yeah, you can sort of see the rough idea of where we're going with the rework, with the city to the south there and the camp to the north, with the outskirts. So yeah, part of it was I think I mentioned this in the blog. Sort of the scale is a big problem. It's sort of hindered, or I think it was a side effect of wanting to make thicker walls. The walls in like the early part of the game are sort of, I suppose they're a bit on the thin side. But although I say if our game tiles are about 1 meter, they're probably around an 1/8 to a 16th size of the actual tile itself. And when Zeah was initially released, they were at the 4 meter, which is quite an extreme jump. And just by having meter thick walls, suddenly the buildings have to be considerably larger to sort of make those walls not feel so gargantuan, as like in other parts of the game, meter thick walls are only really seen around castles. So yeah, just sort of trying to pull back the scale. If we move on to the next image.
Was
sort
there
of, don't know.
sorry, was there anything really important to get right with the rework that you thought when you initially went into this?
I think the key part was sort of bringing that that disparity between the war camp and the actual main city of Shayzien, because that temporary accommodation sort of feel to the old layout isn't ideal, because it didn't really give much of a story. There is parts of the lore that sort of mention how long Shayzien has been established, and it goes back hundreds, maybe even well over 1,000 years, and it doesn't really make much sense that they've done all that time in tents. So yeah, just sort of building on that, give them a story, fixing the scale, sort of giving them a bit of an identity. So yeah, this is essentially the same image we just saw, but just sort of with my my scribbles over the top, just to sort of give a better idea of what's going on. That makes it a bit more readable. Sort of just breaking it down into sections, with like the military camp and the Shayzien city, and then just the various outskirts and the pine forest around the outside. Also with some just random labels. The MS means map square, so just sort of a reference that all of our maps are sort of built out of these 64 by 64 tile map squares, and sort of just sort of getting a rough idea of the scale and scope of things.
We wanted to have a bit more history and kind of naturalness to the landscape. Ideally, you'll be walking through the landscape and just subconsciously you'll be seeing a little ruin here or something there. And in your mind, you'll start to get a bit more of a context about really where you are. And I get a deeper understanding of the history without even having a quest or any narrative or anything, just, in the way that things have been laid out.
Yeah, that environment storytelling is super important. Cool. I think our next bit is about pre-production. So if we go to the next slide. Awesome. So yeah, this is sort of a new process. We've sort of been doing it in the past, but just not to quite to the same degree, of sort of just sitting down all together and sort of hammering out exactly what this update's going to entail. I don't know if you're aware of this web program called Miro. It's essentially like an online whiteboard, essentially. Obviously, in the past, we'd be in the office. We'd get into a meeting room. We'd discuss it. We'd have like post-it notes and meeting boards, sort of whiteboards and computers, laptops, and all that stuff. I don't really, and we only really picked up Miro when we started working from home. But yeah, in terms of like collaborating, on like in early pre-production stages, it's incredible. And even if we do go back into the office, I feel like this would still be a massive tool to use, as it could just it's just so versatile in sort of laying out ideas quickly and easily. As you can see here, I've sort of taken that initial paint over of the map and sort of just broken down the various directions we want to go in. So sort of leading into that forest, pine forest on the outskirts, thinking about how the battlefield's going to look, looking at architecture for the city, stuff for ruins, and then the various like flora and fauna to sort of give that give Shayzien more of an identity, sort of make it feel unique. So as you walk around, you see boars, you see lynx. You won't see these anywhere else in the game, so it just gives it a bit more memorable, gives it a bit more style. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot. Do you guys want to jump in at all and say talk about the sort of pre-production stage? So all that.
Yeah. No, it's no, I mean I can jump in, and that it's like West has said, we haven't really done this in full, or this process kind of in its entirety, the way we did it this time before. So it was kind of a planning process of the entirety of the Shayzien rework and the AKD quest in general. So it was, when we were sitting down and starting these talks, we were talking about it such a broad scale, and really making sure that the whole Shayzien rework kind of flowed into itself. Like everything was justified. Why is there a forest here? Why is there a camp here? Why is anything here, right? And so we really went through the nitty gritty, like Wes said, and just really thought about how things should be in a really broad sense. And I think that really shows in the end product, because everything really has such a grounded and realistic feel in the version in game right now. I think it just goes to show like what that kind of planning up front can really do down the line, and make the final product even that much better.
Was the
Absolutely.
was the history? Oh, sorry, Grub, do you want to go?
Go ahead, Sarnie, go ahead.
Thank you. Was the history of Shayzien or any of the surrounding areas important to you guys when you were taking on the rework?
Yeah.
When you say history, you mean like as in like the narrative history, like the lore?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Because we don't have crazy fidelity, so we can't go ahead and make everything super realistic or anything like that. Go in the RS3 direction, so we have to compensate in a sense and make everything justifiable and realistic. We kind of touched on that before, but it's kind of I mean, I've already said it. I'm almost rambling.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
So yeah, it gets it just makes the world more believable if there's elements of that history. Yeah, as Grab said, like you walk past a ruin, it's like, oh, why is that ruin there? What did that ruin serve for? And just by putting in a simple lock here and there or a bit of scenery, you can tell. Well, you don't even tell a story. You just get players thinking about what that could be.
Yeah. I remember, West, we had conversations about the Lizardman Temple, and the ideas behind that, and how we were talking about, like, this idea of, maybe in the past, Lizardmen were doing stuff, and they would have these temples to Zarek and stuff like that, and so we had all these crazy ideas of the kinds of stories that we wanted to tell by making these locations. And
Yeah.
I think having that planning up front really afforded us that, because then we can go, oh, we can actually think about, like, here are all the little micro stories that we're going to tell that's going to equal the entirety of the story of the Shayzien Rework.
Yeah, I remember even getting that like a timeline down, like just going through all the various bits of lore that we put down, and it's been like, so this was then, but it doesn't feel like any of this is sort of referenced in the environment itself. So yeah, how can we lean into this and sort of show, like, I mean, especially the ruins of Mora, I believe it is, to the south. It sort of shows that there's like a bit of progression with Lizardmen, because before there's just that. I mean, there's a canyon full of them, and it was like, why is there a canyon full of lizardmen? And then with the Kebos region, we sort of gave them a bit more of a home with mulch, and then it was a bit like, well, surely they should have ruins as well. They should have like a past, and having that quite close to the Shayzien area makes sense because not to put any spoilers out, but there is a connection there between Shayzien and the Lizardmen, not just location based, and just sort of show that over time, they've also lost things, and it's not quite as black and white as it might seem. Awesome. I think
Awesome.
moving on to the next image. Cool. Yeah. So this is sort of looking at sort of influences behind the Shayzien city. We've always felt like it has Eastern inspiration, so we wanted to sort of lean into that. So we've been building lots of mood boards, sort of taking inspiration, thinking about how we can lay out the buildings, sort of thinking about the challenges we have in our engine as well, and our tools, trying to create like a realistic looking building like this with these crazy stilts, which I wouldn't trust myself. It's quite difficult to do with our tools due to the way the game's built. It's essentially kind of like building a 3D game but on a 2D map editor. It's definitely quite different to the likes of like UE4 and Unity, where you can literally just drop and drag and move assets around freely. We have to abide by a grid, just how the players move around. We also need to sort of figure out how that's all going to work in conjunction. Also thinking about like just height, scale, and render distance. So these things really do change how you can build an environment, and sort of the limitations that we have.
I mean, we're looking at references like this, and we're doing our best to kind of pull this stuff off. We're pushing the engine to its limit right now, and we'll keep doing that. So
yeah, for sure. And when we look at stuff like this, we're looking at kind of the elements that we can maybe incorporate that we can do in engine, and because we have the ability to do like animations and stuff like that. So we don't have like a fancy wind system or anything like that, but we can animate a lantern, and so that's like one of the things that we did that we ended up implementing in the final thing, having like a lantern blowing in the wind to try to show that. So
yeah, definitely. I think when it came to mapping those lanterns down, I was being very specific with the direction I was putting them in, trying to sort of hint that there was almost like a win system going around it. But yeah, it was all just yeah, very handcrafted placement.
There's an interesting question here about shader fidelity. We don't have any shaders. Everything we do is completely all in poly.
Completely flat. Completely flat.
Yeah.
No material definitions.
Yeah,
You
it's
guys work magic with the the systems we got.
yeah, it makes the process quite interesting because yeah, just sort of making those finer tweaks can be it's not just sort of like, oh, the light intensity is too strong here, let's just tweak that down a little bit, or you know, the way a lot of assets are created for other games is you just use your the color of that thing. You don't have to worry about the brightness of it because the lighting engine will sort that out. You don't have to be too careful. But the way we make things, we have to make sure that everything is consistent throughout every single asset, and it makes making a nice image that much more challenging.
But then, it's funny, just something that I was reminded of, that there is these kind of, what is it, serendipity? Kind of when things, line up where you can see some of the windows in that reference image there have very angular patterns to them, which is perfect for our engine. We can do squares, we can do rectangles, we can do, straight corners very, very well. And yeah, it was perfectly aligned with the architecture that we were seeing. So we were like, yeah, definitely have to do that. So yeah, you'll see a lot of those windows all around the city because we were like, that's perfect,
Yeah. Yes, we move on to the next image. Yes, just looking at more of our references, sort of, and how we wanted to, sort of build those into the actual environments themselves. So we got like references of, gravestones and buildings, all these various monuments. I don't know if you want to, speak about the monument, the gravestones a little bit, Modbrow, because I think didn't you take some of these pictures yourself, or?
Yeah, I actually did. Yeah, no. So we were working on this rework, planning it out, and it's one of those things where when we were looking at having the graveyard, what is it, sorry, I'm blanking on the name. Graveyard of Heroes. Thank you. We were talking about having because my initial memory of the graveyard is it's quite big, and this was implied to be some sort of graveyard of of a war or something, and so this idea of having a graveyard was in the plan, but when we started looking at these Eastern influences, making it more that kind of thing. I was reminded of a trip I had to Japan, and I remember seeing a lot of those graveyards, but they're not the same in Eastern countries. They're far more angular, far more like pillar-like, and they're really dense as well. You'll go to graveyards and it'll just be almost like a cityscape of varying heights of pillars and stuff like that. And again, perfect serendipity, and then we can do cubes really well in our engine. So it was a thing where I thought it would be an interesting design element to have for the Graveyard of Heroes to be more that Eastern style. We're also trying to kind of push the limitations as well a little bit. So if you look closely enough, there is some kind of marbling on those. So where we don't have textures or shaders, we do have polygons. So I've been doing a bunch of experiments trying to get that look of materials into the polygons themselves, and you can see that in the actual the granite marbling of those monuments and gravestones. So yeah.
And it's an interesting thing, that granite marbling. So we have textures in the game, but the tech for it is pretty shaky. So one thing we're doing a lot of exploration in right now is to actually generate textures with topology. Rao's done some really, really good tech where I can literally draw a picture for him. I can draw a texture, and this system will go through and generate topology based off of that. That's letting us do a lot more interesting things with, like you've seen on the gravestones. We can actually get kind of like a marble texture in the game now and still have it look like old school RuneScape. Because the danger is we throw a bunch of textures on and suddenly, it's either going to start looking like RS3 or even a game that none of us recognize. So
yeah, or just something else entirely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sorry,
Is it hard for you
there's
guys?
now. Oh.
Go on,
Oh,
Max, go ahead.
there's one quite. Someone just said one thing there about textures being old school. That
Yeah,
is a really. You're gonna be yeah.
yeah,
That's
same.
that's an ongoing discussion about textures are definitely old school. It's about when and where you use them, and we're still trying to work out the art of when and where you use them. I'm looking for any mob or boss or anything I can throw a texture in and go to the guys and be like, look, this is the time for the texture. This is the time for the, the super HD chainmail texture that isn't anywhere else. Like, there's a place for that. It's just
For
about
sure.
when we do it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we have some examples coming up. I don't want to spoil anything, but yes.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, how hard is it for you guys to tread that very, very delicate line between not old school or not enough old school? I imagine the balance is very tough.
It's an age-old question, especially when you look at what old school is, and you look at it like it's got parts of the game that were created back in 2004, parts of the game created in 2007, and even like part of the assets that were created in 2004 were made for the original RuneScape Classic game, where they're more like 2001 assets. Lots of different artists. I believe the way the game started, the Gower brothers I think they're making a few of the art assets themselves, but for the most part, they were just getting these outsourced. They were just saying, hey, we need a tree. Hey, we need a castle kit. There wasn't really any formal like art cohesion going on, and it is. I mean, even if you just took the 2007 version that was launched back in 2013, it's not consistent. And to say that the old school art style is something that we can aim for, it's an impossibility, because you make something that looks like 2004, and the people that like the part that looks like 2007 will complain, and vice versa. So it's a hard line to ride. I believe when I first joined, I was like, oh yeah, I can do that. I can make old school style. And then as I got more and more into it and started looking at all the more assets in the background, it's like there isn't really a style here. We need to sort of figure out what's working, what the players like, and sort of lead into that and sort of create a more consistent image. So yeah, it's a difficult one.
Good answer.
Very, very good answer. Yeah. Again, I don't think there's any right answer in terms of how old school style is right now. So, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Cool. So yeah, I think our next slides are moving into the actual production of the actual remake itself and looking at some befores and afters. So here is the Xerix lookout at the top there. It's not quite a before that that we saw in game, prior to the AAKT rework. It was more of like a very rough grey boxing part of it where I'd sort of just gone through and done some asset replacement. And at the bottom there, you can actually see the final image there. Part of this was sort of lifting up the terrain, making it a little bit more vertical, sort of give the lookout a little bit more of a view, especially when it's right, a stone's throw from the redwoods, which are, I believe, the tallest structure, the tallest thing in game are the redwood trees. So yeah, that's sort of wanted to make it feel a little bit more imposing. And also sort of that, I mean, that was sort of the reason why I was sort of leaning towards a pine tree forest around the outside. The previous trees do look a little bit squat in comparison to the humongous redwoods, so having a more of a taller pine around that is a good way to sort of bridge that, fall off a little bit better. So yeah, I don't think I've got anything more to say about this image. Any of you two do?
It's a good example of what we're focusing on with the reworks, in a sense of making things more natural. While we're not necessarily upping the fidelity, we're being more conscious about how we place assets and how they relate and how they tell a story in a scene. Trying to make things look more natural, especially as we said previously, everything's on a grid. The west placement of the trees here and the shrubs and the foliage, the path, all of it, it's done in such a way that you even making the path more crooked. We're just looking for everywhere we can to make it feel natural.
Yeah, there was a term that Rao, you sort of coined as we were working through this. It was like fidelity contrast.
Fidelity contrast. It's something that I thought was kind of core to the. I think it's core to, I guess, the way the game works. We don't have lighting. We don't have a lot of the conveniences many engines have now, and so we really just have color and and polygons. And so it's this thing where how do you make a visually interesting image with very limited use of value, and so there's a concept I mean, to get into a bit, to get into a bit, I remember reading some stuff from John Romero at id Software, talking about when he was making the original Doom level design stuff, and he was talking about the fact that when he made the levels for Doom, he didn't focus on just contrast of light and dark. He also focused on contrast of shape. And things like that. So he focused that on everything. So if you have a room that's small, follow it up with a big room, right? Like contrast in shape. And so the idea of contrast, not just in value, like the traditional idea of contrast, but the contrast of everything, you know, of shape, of size, of and in this case I said fidelity. You know, this idea of what I think makes a lot of kind of old school stuff feel old school. And I think this is true of like old graphics as well. Is this this line that it rides between high noise and low noise, and so it's this fidelity contrast that you're constantly trying to hit a sweet spot where you have the trees that have the textures that we were talking about before, where that's your high contrast in the fidelity sense, and then you have the smooth ground where we have no textures, where we have very few noise going on, and that's your low fidelity. And so it's this sweet spot between high and low fidelity, that creates that contrast. That, I mean, I'm just kind of, I don't know what I'm talking about, but yeah, that's kind of the way I was seeing it. That I don't know, I don't want to say I coined a new term, but it's
I mean, you're one of our artists, Ral, so I feel like you're definitely the right person to talk about.
Sorry, I just don't like. I don't want to be too.
You're right though, that fidelity contrast is really important. If you look at a lot of old areas in the game, there's like vast swathes of just one color, or great areas where there's not much going on. It's good, you can rest your eyes on it, but there's not really much feeding you. So, but you can go the other way and just have so much going on that your eyes are just blown away. So that's what that's really about. We're trying to massage your eyes, get you to relax into the image. That's what that's all about.
Yeah. Whenever you see a good image, it's like our hands are coming out and they're touching your eyes, and they're
yeah, and we just
slowly circles right on the iris. Yeah. Anyway,
this stream's gone in a very different direction than I originally had foreseen it to be, but I don't mind it. I don't mind.
I'm sorry, I got my weirdness out of the way.
Yeah, just to pick up on that point again, it's like something that like a player called, I think they go by Gnome, but their username was Street Monge. They sort of picked up on this, sort of comparing areas of the game from like Lumbridge Castle to Varrock Castle, where you've got that sort of Lumbridge Castle with that very noisy texture compared to the polycolor of the Varrock Castle, where that sort of that fidelity's been removed, and maybe the mapping as well. So areas like Varrock, they sort of focus more on how things are laid out, and that sort of that fidelity sort of moved to the ground. It moved to the ground even more so when they started adding textures to the ground in 2008, which it's sort of there was sort of a flip at some point, and sort of trying to add that fidelity back to the walls just using polygons is very expensive, while it's very cheap with a texture. So it's still I suppose the term is still something that needs to be worked on a little bit, but I think it's good, and it's going somewhere that could help us sort of get the core of that old school art style. Cool, yeah, so should we move on to the next image? So I think we're going to go through these ones a little bit quicker than the previous ones. This is just sort of looking at the the assault course that is housed above the Shayzien camp. So this just sort of shows some very early, I mean, I want to call it a grey box, but grey boxes are usually grey. Rather than having to go through and make a bunch of grey box assets for it, we just sort of leaned on the current assets we had in our repository. So you might recognize the palisade there is from like Barbarian Village. You got some wooden supports that might be, I think those are the ones I remade for LMS, but I think that's originally from like the Goblin Village, and taking the Death Camp from Berthorpe, and the old Shayzien assets as well. Just sort of building like a rough idea of how this course is going to look. If we move to the next image, we have the paint over that our latest, one of our newer members of the team made, Mod Jerv. She did like a paint over, sort of fixing up some of the colors and sort of showing how to make a very clear and concise path. So I think the term the term she used was Naughty Dog Yellow, which is a way of sort of guiding the player, and it works quite nicely because the colors associated with agility, red and yellow, of the mark of grace, were a good thing to lean on, and it's so the yellow is a quick color, so it gets to your eyes quite quickly. That's a joke me and Mudgy had, where it just helps guide. It can clearly and concisely see the path precisely. So if they move to the next image, it sort of just shows a comparison of the early grey box with that final image, where the assault course is very easily picked out from it. Yeah.
Once we saw this as well, we have been having discussions and looking at previous agility courses and getting a comparison. I'm not sure how much we haven't really planned too much about this, but we're definitely this is some sort of a revelation for us in terms of the way we're treating agility courses.
Yeah, definitely. It's sort of like a side effect as well of how players have started to become accustomed to how assault courses, rooftop agility more so than anything has sort of become used. I think the initial rooftop release was in the early year of old school, where there was no artists on board, so it was all just done through existing assets and dev work. And since then, like, the signposting and where you have to click to get to the next stage isn't clear at all. And so people have other clients have solved this by having these big large green boxes, which don't look great, but they do certainly make the whole process a lot easier. And if you're running it around the same course hundreds, thousands of times, having that knowing where to click is very important. So yeah, just being very considerate of where the click zones are and how that sort of signposting is being done. And it's definitely something I want to pick up for some ideation in the future. Just looking at what we can do to the rooftops to sort of, we're not going to take away the ability to have these big, large, ugly green boxes, but for those people who don't like to rely on those, to actually have some actual assets in place there which clearly guide you through the course rather than just hoping that you can figure it out yourself would be ideal. I think that's what I wanted to say about the assault course.
There's an interesting question here from Fart Diarrhea. What's our opinion on unique Karen garb for players?
Oh yeah, I think I initially discussed that when we were working on working through the pre-production. I think it was more of a nice to have that ended up getting cut, but I think the sort of the direction I wanted to go in with it was sort of like currently the Shayzien civilians just sort of wear generic clothing, but sort of leaning into those Eastern influences and maybe having it so that they could even create some out of maybe some boar hide and some lynx hide, so it's sort of relevant to that area. That'd be really cool. Someone just mentioned in the chat we have Shayzien armor, but something a little bit less militaristic and a bit more just casual wear. We've done things in the past with like Song of the Elves and Dark Mice released for Sins of the Father, where you could get elven attire and vampire attire, and sort of gives you just a bit more fashion-scaping possibilities, which as artists we're always for that.
Grub, you made that username up, right? Like that wasn't real, right? That username?
No, I can see him in chat. I can see him in chat right now.
Wow,
Yeah,
that is
he's chilling.
incredible. Awesome name. Oh my god. Props to
Love
Fart
the commitment.
Diarrhea.
I hope it's the same across all social channels and it's not just Twitch.
It's certainly out there.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Cool, yeah. So yeah, should we move on to our. Oh wait, unless you got a question, go for it.
I was just going to say, if it's up to you guys, if you'd like to take some questions or you'd carry on running through, because we haven't got too long left.
Oh yeah.
So,
oh my god, that's flown by, hasn't it?
Yeah. So we could showcase the rest of the imagery, ask some questions, but up to you guys what you want to do.
Yeah, it might be worth going on to the next one, just because that does have one point that we can just point out, and then maybe we just skip to the end. Does that sound okay?
Yeah,
cool.
Definitely. So yeah, well, I suppose this takes us onto something we've slightly touched on already with the whole fidelity contrast and textures on trees. So something I've coined as the great tree debate, like what is an old school tree, and also like what is a texture as well, and what because there's a lot of times where players say like with these trees they don't like the texture on them, which is a bit incorrect because there is no textures on it. It's all just polycolor. Effectively, the texture that we're kind of seeing on it is a side effect of the sort of retro rendering system we have, which is called like Grub shading, which is a very basic sort of color grading of the image, which sort of gives it that variety. So if you move on to the next one, this was sort of the grey box, and then the next image sort of shows more of the prop pass, where we've taken some of the trees from, I believe these are the yew trees from around the Prif area, and these are the ones that sort of get that problem where people complain about them looking a bit too plasticky, a bit too just not the sort of texture you sort of expect to see on a tree, and the shapes as well. They're very very out there, very exaggerated and quite extreme. And I think just in the past players have sort of been a bit more leaned more towards if you got a yew tree, it should look like a yew tree, and we have an established look for yew trees. So if we get to that final image, well, not the final image, but the next image actually. Sorry. The next image there. It sort of shows that we've taken that yew tree asset, but we wanted it to fit the color palette and the theming of the Shayzien area. So we've sort of darkened the bark on the tree and sort of had a look at the texture itself. It is essentially the same tree texture that's on all the other trees, but the contrast has been sort of removed a little bit, so it's not quite so noisy. And it's just it's been like hue match to match the rest of the foliage. So as we said earlier, we're massaging the eyes. We don't want to be too aggressive.
Nice. West, when was the last tree texture made for old school?
I don't think there has been one. I think I tried to make one back in 2016 when I was working on the I think I made I attempted to make a cherry blossom tree for the Zen POH Superior Garden, but at the time we just didn't have the ability to add new textures. Although looking back, I think the problem was that we were trying to save them at the wrong bitrate, because if you save them out at 32, it's fine. If you try 24 or 16 or whatever, it's it throws a little error. So I think the problem we were having was just sort of a lack of knowledge of how to use our tools at the time. Since then we've just never had the
So this is like the first tree texture from since 2013, right?
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah. So interesting.
The real question is, when's the next one?
Oh, that is the next question.
Yes, indeed. What I would like to do is sort of have we have somewhat broken texture tools within our sort of rudimentary tool called Jagged at the moment, where we can sort of apply like flat textures to things. We did this with the clan Vexillum and the clan cape, where we just added the icons, but we to do like a bit slightly different angles and shapes. It gets a bit buggy. So hopefully once we get those fixed, we can start to play around with not just new textures but also new shapes as well on the trees, and see what we can do with that as well. I think there's also another image. The next image as well sort of goes to show the sort of difference we have between sort of relying on textures or just on shape. Again here with the pine trees as well, they were initially quite bright. They certainly didn't feel like proper pine trees. If you go look at a pine forest, the canopies are generally a lot darker than the ground. So once that was flipped, changed those Prif assets with some more older assets, it just gives a lot more nicer and a balanced picture, and sort of seeing both polycolor and texture working in the same images. It's really nice.
Top being the before, bottom being the after, just for clarification.
So there's a spicy comment there saying from Feed Wooks, who cares about the colors? You might not explicitly care about the colors, but when you're trying to play a game and there's just bad color choices and your eye just keeps darting to places that have nothing to do with what you're trying to do, colors are important. It's important that we get that presentation right.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of players out there and parts of the team that care about the colors. So sorry, Feedwooks, but the colors are important. They're important.
Yep, definitely. I mean, I would hate to think the players don't care about colors when whenever we make anything purple, they certainly tell us they care. So
that's true.
Much to the sadness of Mod West, of course.
Yeah, indeed. If we just like cycle through the next 3 images, just to sort of get through them a bit quicker as we are running out of the hour. So yeah, we'll just sort of annotate over them. So yeah, again, a before and after. Well, if you go back to that one, say quickly, like a before and after of like how we were looking and leaning into that Eastern style. So we initially had pews for the church, but we're thinking maybe something more like meditation pillows, and also just looking at some of the assets around the outside as well. And you can see like the gravestones as well in the corner that we spoke about earlier, and how they look a lot more interesting than the previous sort of just rough wooden ones that were strewn about. If we go to the next one, we can talk a bit about the sort of paint overs that we do to sort of push shapes and make things look a bit more a bit more interesting. Previously, the church didn't really seem like a church from the outside; it just looked like a big stone building, and sort of looking into how we can change up change it all to wood in this case to sort of change the top floors to wood, sort of give that more theming with the rest of the city, adding that spire. You sort of see a little paint over there of the cushions as well.
Still seeing a Jammy Dodger in my peripheral vision anytime I see this image.
Maybe we should get some Shayzien themed Jammy Dodgers.
Oh hell yeah!
Market.
Yes. Ship it.
Get like a little skull in the middle, maybe. That'd be pretty cool. Cool. Yeah. If we move on to the next ones, these are just sort of like befores and afters now. So yeah, we can go through these quite quickly. So yeah, this is sort of just like an early image of the giant pit, and then like a finished version of it below. Sort of showing that contrast and how we've what we do as we go through the process of giving feedback and just sort of pushing it as far as we can go in terms of mapping and assets, rather than focusing too much on making it look too complicated and busy. The next one is an image of the camp. Again, just sort of showing a rough grey box. Again, not really grey, of just pre-existing assets, and then this does go to show what we can do with color. So with a more consistent color palette, in the first one, all the woods are sort of just like odds and ends, various different colors. In the bottom image, they're all consistent, like they're coming from the same trees, like the local trees that they'd used to cut down. Also leaning into sort of the black and red theming of the Shayzien army, and also looking at like saturation as well. Like the previous tent roofs, they were very loud. These like big white supporting parts to them, which we were a bit confused as to what they were. I think we ended up learning that they were indeed ivory, or at least that was the intention. But where the ivory was coming from was another question, as there isn't really elephants. I suppose there's some mammoths in the wilderness, but yeah, there's not really elephants that you'd be getting ivory from. So yeah, turning that to wood so it doesn't take quite as much attention, and bringing the attention to that central fire, which is essentially the where you'd expect the light to be coming from. And then we've just got some final images here at the end. We can just go through as we answer some questions. We might go a bit past the hour, but just sort of get some things in.
I've spoken to Modred and he's kindly given us a small extension, so thank you, Modred.
Awesome.
Much
Thank
appreciated.
You,
So yeah, let's answer some questions then. We've taken some from chat. Modlight's kindly gathered some for us. So the first one is from Con01, which is amazing design on the Giant's Den Cave. Will a rework to the catacombs come in the future with this kind of style?
So there was we should have added some images of that. I completely forgot about that. What was that?
Yeah, there's so much like that. There's a lot of people bringing up the Xantha fight and the Yama fight as well, and we haven't brought any images for that too. So
Next stream.
Next
stream.
Yeah. We're gonna get into
Maybe we'll have to do a part
next
2 to this one.
Yeah.
With the next time, we're going to go into more detail about the quest assets themselves and the boss fights and the various areas that we create with that more specifically.
Just colours. It's just going to be a full hour of colours next stream.
Yeah, exactly. Color palettes as far as the eye can see. To answer the question, that is sort of my intention. I suppose the catacombs as well. I suppose that's another area. I mean, I won't take the credit for that. I didn't make them that purple. And as you can see, the direction we kind of want to go in with the Giant's Cave and something we learned from BIM, as leaning too heavily into sort of these more fantastical colors, not having them as sort of the accent colors can be a bit it doesn't make for a very grounded world. So yeah, that's the kind of direction we want to go in with the future of the catacombs. I think I did speak about this many years ago. The sort of direction is sort of not just fixing up the graphics, making it a bit of a nicer image, but also just the theming of each dungeon as well. Much like how we were a bit against Neve's Cave back in 2017, being against sort of like just the logic behind the catacombs doesn't really make too much sense. I mean, for a start, it's called the catacombs, and as far as I can see, there isn't really any catacomb-esque architecture or references to any sort of actual catacomb itself. So yeah, much like with the giants, pulling those out, giving them their own cave, maybe a cave that would be accessed via Lovacaine, that would be full of all the sort of dragon-esque creatures that are in the catacombs. For Arceus, perhaps that's where all the demons will go. Maybe Piscarius could have like a place for all the aquatic creatures like the sand crabs. I don't know about the Dagonoths. I'm not entirely sure how we feel about having Dagonoths in Zeah, because it does seem a little strange lore-wise, considering that they come from the area beneath the lighthouse. But yeah, sort of just giving them their own areas, so they can all look like they feel at home, rather than being in the sort of abstract purple cave, and then leaving the catacombs for like undead creatures, which would make the most sense to be found within the catacombs itself. We would still make it quite accessible, like we've done with the Giant's Den. You can still access the Giant's Den from the current catacombs. They'd all be interconnected, and the idea is that the Dark Altar is leaking into these places, and so you still have the effects. You'll be able to get the totems and the dark crystals for your arc lights, and your prayer restore also. The idea is to keep the same thematics, but just sort of keep them more self-enclosed. So yeah, definitely something that we'll be looking to do in the future.
Awesome. So our next question is from Kruger, and they ask, what are the plans concerning the new presented content in the new Kingdom Divided quest, like the Kingdom of Varlamore? Are there plans for expanding Zeah?
Yes, indeed. I don't know if Grub, you want to speak about just a rough, obviously not too much because we'll be going into it in more detail with the next stream, but just sort of some rough ideas about setting up the style of Queen Ziani and
Queen Ziani, yeah, Queen Arcan Ziani. Yeah, her references are somewhere between Roman and Aztec, which is a pretty weird, if you think about that historically, that's a pretty weird blend. Two cultures that never met, separated by hundreds of years. But the visual appeal there is quite nice. So the whole, oh man, I don't know how much I can talk about, but we're going deeply into it. She's incredibly ornate. The whole Varlamore faction is going to be just really, we're going to push the beauty on it, and just really, it's going to be unlike anything quite in the game so far, I think, based on the sketches we have so far. God, how much can I talk about? I understand.
I think that's good. I think that's a good tease. Yeah.
I think so. I mean, we've given enough secrets today. Like, talked about secrets. There's a little tease is fine.
Cool, a little tease. That's good. Okay, cool. I think looking at the snake on her shoulders, if you want to understand our ambition for Varlamore, it's looking at the snake on the shoulders. It might sound simple, but putting a snake on someone's shoulders in old school RuneScape is really, really hard work. That was a technical feat from Mod Ghost. And definitely going forward, we're just going to keep pushing the envelope like that. And Varlamore is an excellent opportunity to do that. So very excited to dig into that.
Yeah, definitely. Just to sort of explain that a little bit more, because people might be surprised we said Mod Ghost. He has actually been contracting for us for about a year now. So a lot of the recent characters we've seen were his creations. So things like Zampa and the Queen, a whole bunch of things. So yeah.
Well, there's an interesting question there about how we did the snake. My understanding is it's. God, because someone else, maybe Brow or Wesley could explain the technical side.
Yeah, we certainly went into a lot of back and forth and conversations about how that's going to be possible. We went into like building it into the actual mesh itself. maybe having it as like an actual secondary effect, a bit like when you cast a spell on like a player or an NPC, it sort of spawns little effects. Could we have one of those like playing constantly on it? We're always fighting with like the rendering in our game because there is no Z buffer. We have to especially when it comes to player kit, we have to be very specific in what renders first. I think in the end we just kind of got a bit. I wouldn't say lucky. It was definitely Mordgeist's skill that sort of made it all work quite nicely. But yeah, it just sort of came together in the end as sort of like an extra floating piece of geometry that sort of just went around the body and the arms. So,
yeah. I believe it's equipped to her similar to how a weapon is, right? I believe.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
We had early talks about her using it like a whip.
yeah. So maybe you see that. Maybe for Valinor.
Who knows? Who knows? But yeah, that's quite an interesting image I've now got.
I already
cool.
teased the sausage whip a few weeks ago. So.
The next question comes from Jinmei. Is there going to be an art contest anytime soon? I mean, I could probably take this one because it's sort of always a collab between CM and the art team that do these competitions. Hopefully there will be. I want to do more because they're cool. I know the hat for the designer hat competition is being worked on, and I think it's nearly done. So that shouldn't be too long until that's in game, which is good. So yeah, hopefully more. I can't tell you when the next one is because I don't know, but I'm sure we'll sort something out for some of the upcoming content coming.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the banana wizard hat is something. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into the game, especially with things like the cursed banana and the banana cloak. We've almost got like a full banana aesthetic going on.
We just need to finish off the aesthetic. I think we're golden.
What was it? What did you call it? West Banana Mancer or something? I can't remember.
That's right.
Yes.
Banana Mancy is someone said in chat, which I like.
Yeah. Maybe that's how Agrif Nana became a thing.
Maybe.
One of the best NPCs of all time. Cool. I think we'll go for one more question. I'm just quickly looking through. Let's go with number 12. Druid, we'll go with number 12. So if you had the freedom to change any environment, model, layout, building, etc. in game, free of poll, old or new, what would you change, how and why? There's a lot of commas in that. There's a lot.
Wow. I mean, I think I might be a bit biased towards like Koren at the moment. So obviously, yeah, just getting the rest of that finished would be great. But is there any older areas that could be quite contentious that I'd change that I kind of hate?
The wilderness.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go for it. Someone raised it in the comments, and I thought it was a really interesting one. I love how desolate the wilderness is. I probably wouldn't change much, but I would make it tell more of a story. I wish there were like little, corpses of players still wearing half their PK gear and just little stories here and there. I feel like the wilderness could use a few stories in the environment, so I would love to do that.
Yeah, that's a good shout, that one. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think. Can I wait? I mean, you said the wilderness. Like that's like the whole area. I thought it was like one asset or what. I mean, if we're going like the whole thing, I mean, I'd love to redo Tutorial Island. Honestly, I think that's a place that could definitely be improved on.
But yeah, just in
these
like
brave conquests you guys want to take on. Very brave.
Yes.
I mean, I think I recently went back to Tutorial Island with the render distance, and I was like, oh wow, you can actually see the whole island, and it gives you actually a better like idea of where you're going. But even then, the layout is kind of confusing. And yeah, I know in the past RuneScape 3 have tried, they've redone their tutorials quite a few times, but it's certainly something that I mean, just because it's always what it's been doesn't mean it's working.
Yeah, and I wouldn't change much. I think it could just do with a visual, just a little bit of visual. It's the areas that I think we've probably looked at the least. So it's nice to give it a little bit of pizzazz.
Yeah, that's that. I haven't really properly answered it myself.
What's wrong with
Pizzazz.
pizzazz? That's a word.
The pizzazz work of the artists going forward for Wilderness and Tutorial Island. You heard it first.
It's a normal word
oh.
normal people use. I don't know what's wrong. Anyway.
Yeah, I had someone asking what a jammy dodger is in the chat earlier. This is British biscuit. Just for those who don't know what that is.
No, don't worry. I had to Google it. I'm sorry.
All right, cool.
Is it similar to anything from America? I don't know.
I mean, there's a bunch of that kind of stuff, like sweets, like biscuits, cookies.
Yeah. Oh, cookie, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, definitely making me hungry now, guys. So we are going to wrap up.
Sorry.
Cool. So we will just run through the announcements very quickly, and then we will wrap up. So, ! Game update. Our first batch of new client features is here. Explore all of them, all the ones we've added to the new C++ client, including the Chambers of Xeric helper, tile markers, anti-drag options, boost indicators, and much, much more. You can try that all out in Steam and let us know what you think. Please do, because the team have worked very hard on it and they would love to know your feedback. So you can take a look at all of that with ! Game update. And we will be having a stream tomorrow at 5 PM where some of the JMods who have worked on the first drop will take you through some of those and maybe tease some new ones. ! AKD, A Kingdom Divided, Old School's 150th quest is out now. Uncover the secrets of the Karen Council in the next chapter of the Great Kren storyline, and you'll also be able to experience the rework to Shayzien and improved Arceus spellbook. So find out more with ! AKD, and just double check that and today's news post as they go over all the changes that we've made over the last week. ! Mini roadmap. If you want a reminder of what's upcoming for the next 2 months of Old School, then use ! Mini roadmap to find out what we've got planned for the not so distant future. And finally, if everything goes to plan, tomorrow we will be releasing the Wilderness Changes blog, which will include an analysis on the recent survey results and a look into our proposal for the upcoming changes. So that is everything for today's stream. Any last words from the wonderful art team?
I just realised Modzuko posted in the chat that there's going to be less beard next week, and I was like, oh damn, we did definitely bring the beard game this week.
We did.
We did. That's true.
Yeah, tomorrow's stream team are going to have to catch up with the beard game. Maybe we'll sort something out for them. So
maybe some fake beards or something.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you everyone for participating. We never really knew how a pure art stream would go and whether people would really engage, but yeah, it's been great. It's been really cool.
Yeah. Thanks to everyone, especially Fart Diarrhea. I thought that was a really good question. I want to see more of him in the chat, honestly.
Okay, yeah. I'm sure me and Modlight will keep an eye out for them in the future. But yeah, with that, thank you all so much for watching. Remember to tune in tomorrow for the very special new features stream. Less beard, but it'll still be great. And we will see you very soon. Goodbye.
No.
Bye everyone.
Powerful new spells await. Unravel the mysteries this corrupt council are hiding. Balance must be restored in Great Karen. Reunite this once beautiful kingdom, and you'll be rewarded generously. A kingdom divided.